We're going to go to Ron Paul, Fed taking the unprecedented step of promising to keep interest rates near zero for at least 2 more years. Joining us now, a man who hasn't been afraid to criticize the central bank, Congressman Ron Paul. He's a Republican from Texas, also a presidential candidate. Were you watching yesterday, Congressman, as the statement was coming out? And what do you do? Do you sort of, as you hear each additional statement, what was your reaction?
Well, more of the same. I wasn't surprised. That's the only thing that the Fed knows how to do, and that's the only thing Bernanke ever believed in. For him to have done something differently would have been a real surprise to me. But the results of what he said wasn't a surprise at all. I mean, it's just further devaluation of the currency, and that is why gold prices went up. Actually, gold prices don't go up. It's just that the dollar goes down, and people are anticipating the dollar is going to continue to lose its value, so we can anticipate that there's going to be a lot of price inflation down the road.
I mean, it is at this point. Is it parabolic yet in gold in your view? I know you're not obviously you're not a gold investor, but when it moves $60 day in and day out, and everything seems to be going in its favor, I mean, do you think that it can go to $2,000–$3,000?
Oh, yeah, because it could go to zero if we continue to do what we're doing. Because the bubble that I'm concerned about, I don't think gold is what you would call a bubble. I think the bubble is in the price of bonds. I mean, how could anybody have this much trust in the bonds and buy a 30-year bond and earn the interest rates they're making? That's where the big bubble is. But I think what's happening today, and why I see this as such a serious thing, is that I think what we're dealing with is the end of the dollar reserve standard, and that's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just for the United States. Just think how many dollars we've exported, how many people hold dollars. And if this dollar is in big trouble, which is what I think is the problem, I mean, this is just not a minor problem. This is probably a bigger problem than the world has ever faced before. Never has been a fiat currency been used as a reserve standard as so pervasively around the world. And there's not many other places to go, even though they're still, going to treasury bills, but eventually they're going to give up. I mean, just look at what's happening to the Swiss franc. There aren't enough Swiss francs for everybody to buy Swiss francs. So there's not much left other than commodities, and real value. So actually, I think that's what's going to happen, but it's going to reflect the devaluation of the dollar. I was very impressed in 1971 when the dollar relationship to gold went up $3 an ounce, and I was really impressed and motivated me to get very much involved in politics. So you can imagine what I think about 1/1700th of an ounce of gold is a dollar. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I'm utterly amazed that this lasted this long, and they're desperately trying to keep this together because everybody has an interest in saving the dollar, even the Chinese are. But believe me, I do not believe you can save the dollar reserve standard.
Did you believe that S&P's decision to downgrade our U.S. debt was a responsible decision? Some people have actually suggested that what they were ultimately doing was downgrading our currency, which is what you've sort of suggested just now. Is happening.
In some ways, I think it's irrelevant. The markets are much more powerful. They'll downgrade whatever they need to. But for the moment, and for traders, this can be a big deal. And politically, it can be a big deal. But if one announcement like that from somebody like Standard & Poor's that didn't have any idea what was going on with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac can change things. So if that announcement pushes the dollar down and causes some chaos in the stock market, they were destined to do that anyway. So those are just excuses. So I don't think an announcement, although in a very short time in a day-to-day trading has a significance, that doesn't change things. What if they made this announcement and the dollar was as good as gold and everything was hunky-dory? Those announcements would have no meaning. So I think they're just sort of trying to catch up with the market. I mean, I cannot believe people would have high rating for any of this paper money and paper bonds long term when it earns no interest. It's so distorted, and then they decide that all we have to do is set up a committee of 12, and we're going to come up with so-called cuts, which aren't cuts. There are no cuts that anybody's proposing, so no wonder why people are negative. But what I worry about the most is the consequence of currency destruction is violence. And boy, every day there's supports more and more violence, whether it's in London, demonstrations in Israel, all around the world, revolutions going on. And this is all related to sometimes prices of food going up. And this is all related to this fictitious notion about what money is and what it should be.
Yeah, I remember when you asked Chairman Bernanke about whether gold was money, did you find the answer not satisfying?
Well, it was sort of a silly answer. I mean, he can't repeal 3,000 or 4,000 years of history. Money has to come out of the marketplace, as von Mises taught. He says you can't create money out of thin air. Now, when you do, the only reason the dollar has existed by being created out of thin air because it originated in the marketplace. It was a silver standard. It was 370 grains of silver. That's what the definition of a dollar still is. So you can't do this. So for him to say he can repeal it by saying, no, gold is just a regular asset, and we hang on to it just because of tradition. But the markets are saying, look, when times get tough, they go to the gold. And that's not my theory, and that's not a recent theory. That's been around for a long, long time, and they're not going to be able to repeal it.
All right, Congressman, we appreciate your time this morning. We hope to see you again soon. And, you know, you're like in the top 3 on most of these polls, so I don't know I don't know how you get to the top, but probably doesn't hurt coming on the show. Anyway, good to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
All right. When we come